Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Power Within podcast. My name is Trevor Evers. I'm your host. And in this episode, I have a fantastic guest. His name is Donald Hamilton. He is a hypnotherapist and coach. And I met Donald at the third annual running of the Irish Hypnotherapy Conference at the Clayton Hotel in Dublin a couple of weeks ago and had a very interesting conversation with Donald. And we found out that we have mutual interests in working with the corporate world and bringing our skills and experience to help both managers and employees at the corporate level and corporate world. And I'm delighted to have Donald on the show here today. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring in Donald. Donald, how are you, my friend? Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, very good, Trevor. Thanks for having me on. Delighted to be here and to have a chat about life, the universe, and everything.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So, suppose a good place, a good starting point would be would you like to tell us a little bit about your journey in terms of how you discovered the art of hypnosis and hypnotherapy and how you got into it and a little bit about the work that you do?
Yeah, well, I've probably what you'd call a portfolio career, and I've done a number of things. I The hypno journey started nothing to do with career. When there was a went to a comedy hypnosis show in Glasgow when I was growing up, and was blown away by what the
Yeah.
power that the hypnotist seemed to have, having people eating onions. And probably most experience of hypnosis is when they get you eating onions thinking it's an apple or running around clucking like a chicken. But I
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
very taken with that, thought I'd like to explore that more. But of course, life took over. And I started just the standard career. I was actually an attorney, a lawyer for a while in Glasgow. Then I moved to London.
Right.
At that point, I decided there's more to life than this. So I dropped out for the first time and went and taught water skiing in Greece for a year.
Very good. Interesting. Bit of a
Yeah,
change.
it certainly was. But it's one of these things. I don't want, I don't want to reach the age of 50 and think I had this chance and didn't take it, and now it's gone. But when I came back, I went into industry and started doing a combination of legal work, commercial work, and particularly negotiations. And with the negotiations, you start to look at what makes people tick, what programs do people run that make them behave in certain ways. And I started looking at
Sure.
NLP and thinking, how can the words I use influence what we're doing in this negotiation?
Right.
How the words someone else is using influence me? And I started to bring that into play in the negotiation world and became a faculty in the Centre of Negotiation Excellence at a company called Accenture. I left Accenture and did my second dropout and took the kids out of school and travelled around the world for a year. And when I came back, I set up my own negotiations consultancy and went into partnership with a consultancy in the States that had come out of the Harvard negotiation project and did a lot of negotiation training and in-person negotiations, and mainly with big pharma and professional services firms. I then went back into industry because a regular predictable income when you've got a family is not a bad thing, and
Sure.
became a
Sure.
commercial director at Hewlett Packard and some of its spin-offs before I was made redundant from there probably about 6 years ago, and thought I really want to focus on developing this psychological side, understanding more about people's mental patterns and things like that. Unfortunately, it coincided with a rather sad event. My brother-in-law took his own life, and I thought if I can prevent one other family going through what my wife's family went through, then I'm doing a good thing.
Yeah.
And that took me into hypnotherapy. I had a chance, I didn't know where to start. And I saw someone called Ali Campbell advertising on Facebook. And I gave him a call and said, I'm interested in getting into this. And he said, well, interestingly, I've been not interested in being famous as such, but working with well-known people. But now I want to sort of expand into training other hypnotherapists. I'll give you a good package if you want to sign up with me. So I did. And that was the start of my hypnotherapy and NLP journey as a almost as a profession, if you like.
Sure.
Since it has evolved, I started off doing the traditional hypnotherapy stuff, stop smoking, weight loss, phobias, IBS. The the depression and anti-suicide I found a bit heavy, and I was scared that I wasn't well experienced enough to be able to make a difference. I didn't want that in my conscience that I hadn't been good enough. But I was speaking to a number of people I used to work with, and they all said, well, you've got a unique crossover. You've got years of corporate experience at a senior level. You've got this hypnotherapy and NLP back. And if you could find a way of combining the two of those, that would be remarkable. So I started to develop this training program that combines the two of them. And I've developed a framework for executives that I call ASDIC, uh, which takes people from overcoming limiting beliefs, very much focusing on mindset, but then adding in tools like communication skills, rapport building skills, listening skills, and some negotiation skills to help you deal with difficult people. And it's been going really well. And there's clearly an appetite for it, as you well know, that the corporate world is torn a bit between looking after their employees and just making a profit. And
Yeah,
you probably see it across your clients as well. Some of them it's, well,
exactly.
we're better have a wellness program in place so we can tick the box, whereas other ones take it really seriously and are really committed to employee well-being.
Exactly. And I think that was how when we connected a couple of weeks back, as I mentioned at the conference, that like we had kind of a similar experience in that regard. That, I was telling you that, I have 12 years myself working in the corporate world as a quality engineer. Back in the day, folks, it different seems like a lifetime ago. But it's that whole thing where, you qualify from college with your degree and like the early part of that kind of career, you're enthusiastic and you're career focused to get up that corporate ladder and stuff like that. And you're making a few bob as well, which helps, the reliable salary at the end of the month and all that. So they were all the pros, but it didn't take long for some of the cons to kind of rear their head and how much I was working back then. In hindsight, when I look back in it, over time and, really like was taking over my life in many respects because I'd be bringing me work home with me. If I was working on particular projects, I'd probably be one eye open at night, kind of thinking about getting a project in on time and meeting some kind of a deadline. And all of the pressure, folks, that comes with that because it's a fact that, like, if you're working the corporate world, we're going to spend 40, 50, 60 hours upwards there a week. And it's impossible to be a happy person outside of the work environment if you're not a happy person inside the work environment. You can't just kind of like put on one mask and, and change, but you can do that to a certain degree. But that takes a lot of energy kind of to do that, doesn't it? Over
Yeah,
time.
it's,
Yeah.
no, as you say, you get in the corporate ladder. I think it's Brian Tracy in his book Goals says everyone wants to climb the corporate ladder, but before you start, make sure it's leaning against the right wall. That's
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that was the thing back then because I always look back on that period and think, look, I done really well at college and like I was all enthusiastic in the first half a dozen years or so. But one thing that college kind of doesn't teach you is when you're in the corporate environment, sometimes how it's very political and, how you need to say the right things at the right time and, maybe, lick the right behinds at the right time as well. But, to get up that ladder and create opportunities that, you think that like you kind of be a little bit naive when you leave college and go into the corporate world that you're not equipped, I suppose, to deal with all of that. And like, especially if you want to kind of remain authentic, be your authentic self and, not kind of in a way, I'm not, to be someone who you're not really. you're just pretending to be just to be a certain persona, whether, you're in a certain role, that comes with a lot of pressure. And especially if you're a manager, a lot of responsibility comes with that, and stress and anxiety that back then I didn't have the tools I wasn't equipped with the tools to handle it. And now, when I, like yourself, when I came across hypnosis and hypnotherapy, I wish I had been back then, but I'm similar to yourself that I work with the corporate world here, as telling you, in Waterford City, where I'm based. They're the southeast of Ireland folks, and helped the company there before Christmas, Caltech, big company here in Waterford, their managers, through facilitating a 6 week wellness, or 6 session, should I say,
Yeah,
wellness program. And that turned out really beneficial for everybody because, you think that, like, in the modern world that we live in, all technology, mobile phones, and all this stuff, that managers would be more, I suppose, equipped, as you said, about communication skills, conflict management skills, all of this stuff. But it's not necessarily the case. So I think there's a huge opportunity there for hypnotherapists and any, like, life coaches to, to bring their skills and experience to help both managers and employees in the corporate world. Would
yeah,
you
no,
agree?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I was reading something who's Sir Alex Ferguson was talking about football these days with all the statistics. He says everyone's got information, but there's less and less people have got knowledge. I thought, well, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Right.
It's probably the same in the corporate world. You've got endless information, you get endless printouts,
That's
but as
right.
you say, it doesn't give you the tools to cope with being being anxious, with managing people. Because when you get promoted, you've usually people have usually got a functional skill, and then they're promoted into a management role and expected just to perform at that level. But no one has ever exposed them to that sort of thing before. As you said, there's the politics. When I ran my negotiation courses with clients, we'd always say, what's the biggest negotiation you have? What's the most challenging one? And they'd always say the internal one.
Yeah.
These were clients that did multi-million pound, billion pound deals, and they said, oh, the biggest challenge is always dealing with our own stakeholders.
Yeah.
And you just never think of that. You imagine everyone's pulling in the one direction rather than everyone having their own individual interests, their own individual ambitions, and all with different agendas to how they'll go about achieving that. So some
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
what we do is helping them deal with the pressure that comes with it, but also equipping them with the skills you say to be
Right.
authentic, to stay calm when people are shouting at them. If someone fires a bullet at them, you don't have to take it. You can look at it and say, "Nice bullet. I wonder why I fired that," and just keep far more level about it. Because
That's right.
interesting. Someone asked me yesterday on LinkedIn what I thought was the biggest wow moment that people had when I was talking about presence and leadership. And I said, I think it's the fact that you can have presence and be authentic. You don't have to suddenly put on this, as you say, this mask of I'm important now, I boss people around, I get what I want, I
Yeah.
bring the table. You can actually back and be, actually, I can do this as me and do it my way. And people see that and appreciate you all the more for it.
To do. To do. And it's an energy, isn't it? It's something where, like, once you have the tools and skills to do that, you can work from a place of, like, once you have a calm and focused mind, even if you go into a meeting, then you can stay grounded and stay focused and respond in an effective way to any situation that you find yourself in the workplace. Because can be where some companies, in my experience, can be a very firefighting environment, as you said,
Yeah.
like, profit in there, but, deadlines and all of the pressure that comes with that. And it's important to be in stepping into your power, staying calm and focused, and, not being part of that kind of treadmill of the firefighting environment where you're constantly overreacting and putting out fires. You feel like you're in that mode, rather than calmly kind of responding to each situation on its own terms. Because usually, you know yourself, whether it be in work or outside work, like if we react in the moment through emotion to any situation, we may end up looking back and regretting that, rather than staying base, calm, focused, and being able to respond in the best way we can. And I think that, from my experience working, with, the company I mentioned here in Waterford, that was the most rewarding part of it and the most enjoyable part of it, because I think it's very much a case where, like, once you get them to role play real-time workplace scenarios of where in the previously they may have been overreacting and firefighting and all this stuff that is just creating all this conflict, that they have the tools and techniques, such as even something simple like breath work. Like I remember one of the classes going, I'm going to teach you a really, really powerful tool here today, folks. What's that? How to breathe. It sounds, but
Yes.
how many of us like actually pay attention, to our breath and something that simple? And then, we can build on that. And I brought in tools such as mindfulness, to control your thoughts and emotions, and then more of the hypnotic stuff like visualization, and eventually towards the end, then more like, flexible in terms of the hypnosis, um, self-hypnosis and tools like that. So, what's your experience with that? Because I actually, in the program that I, prepared, planned, and delivered, um, factored in that when you go to any, corporation, that you're going to have a mixture of, um, people. And it's a different scenario where, like, you're going into somewhere rather than a group coming to us. Like when somebody comes to us, like even in the one-to-one, practice here, they're coming for our help. So if the manager of a company goes, right, okay, Donald, right, you're going to go in there, there's 12 employees, it's always firefighting, and the conflict is always there. You're going to go in there and fix all that. They can be, you have to do that in a certain way, because, it's very important to, get them participating in it and
Yeah.
living it, isn't it?
No, I absolutely agree.
Mm.
I always try and start my corporate sessions with an exercise or something that they won't have seen before, so people become engaged, and
Yeah.
so we're all on the same side. And
Mm.
an exercise that I do, because I still do it, so I won't reveal it on here. People have to book me to see it. But there is another one where I get a £20 note or a €20 note, and I sell it, and I usually get around €40 for it, just by the way people respond to certain situations.
Really
And
good.
that usually gets people engaged and think, oh, how did you do that? I owe him €40 for a €20 note, and another person's giving me €39 and getting nothing. Like,
Yeah,
how did
yeah,
this
yeah,
work?
yeah, yeah.
How did he do that? Maybe his wife's worked out here with a profit of €29 without having done anything, or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, I mean, the other challenge I think we've spoken about before is, at what point do you mention the H word? Do you mention hypnosis?
Yeah, I was going to say
I,
that to you.
I,
Yeah.
I've swung between the two. Some points I say I'm a corporate hypnotist, so people understand. Other times, people are looking for a broader coaching program. Will say we can use hypnosis if everybody's on for it, or if people are on for it, or we can just do visualizations, which are pretty close to hypnosis anyway,
Sure,
depending on your definition of hypnosis.
sure. Absolutely. I mean, the key to it is to, I'm sure you'd agree with this, is to make the work that we do as accessible to as many people as possible. And sometimes, like, it's slowly, slowly, softly, and eventually, like, you're building up and you're getting them on board, and then as you go along through a cumulative effect, you're in a better position to kind of express more of the hypnosis,
Yes.
hypnotherapy skills. Because the reality is, I mean, unfortunately, even though I think things are changing, we see all the different conferences that are happening all over the world. But in Ireland here, I know John Scallon and his team have done a great conference that ran for the third annual running there a couple of weeks back. And that's fantastic, like creating a great, fantastic hypnotherapy community. And all of this, the work that what I've, from my experience and what I've seen and witnessed is they're slowly changing the perception that the general public have of the work that we do in a positive way. But at the same time, I think, I don't know if you'd agree, there's more work to do. I think that there's still a lot of misconceptions out there, and unfortunately, that's that's the way it is. And sometimes you have to be kind of factor in that, and change the wordage a little bit, to make it kind of as open to as many people as possible. As you said, visualization, which is very kind of close to hypnosis anyway. And until become comfortable with it and understand more about how it works. And I think there's a way to do that. And I think I think we have the answers. And that's why, like, I might as well give a plug myself. And as you know, Sharon Ledwith,
Yes.
great hypnotherapist, I had her on the show. You might have seen folks last week or a couple of weeks ago, have joined forces, and we are facilitating a 8-week facilitator training for the corporate world. So in other words, we have ready to go structure system that is already there of how to plan, prepare, deliver, and market a wellness program, a customizable wellness program for any company, and the corporate world, and how to go about doing that. So I'm looking forward to that. That's starting on the 6th of June. And we have also a one-to-one, an in-person training, 2-day training course in Dublin in September. So I'm looking forward to that, and that's going to be a great experience. And I'm glad that I met Donald, actually, because Donald is, as now we are meeting, and that's the great thing about these conferences, isn't it? That we are making contacts, and we're building that experience and exchanging best practices, and that's only a good thing. And I'm delighted that you've come my way, Donald, and we're planning, myself and Donald, maybe doing something together at some stage as well. So I think there's a huge opportunity there, isn't there, for hypnotherapists to make a difference in the corporate.
Oh, I think there is, and because the corporate world, I was looking at something the other day that said was it 78% of executives, in fact, of CEOs, said they suffered from imposter syndrome. If 78% of
Wow.
CEOs suffer from imposter syndrome, how far down the organization does that go? And the trouble, I know everyone says talk about it. No one in most workplaces want to talk about it in case they're seen as weak, in case their boss thinks there's something wrong with them, or in case they're weak. It's still very much hidden and swept under the carpet in a lot of places. I don't want to say that I'm anxious about this. I don't want to say that I can't cope, because the person next to you looks like they're coping just fine. As you see,
Yeah,
you're both
yeah,
trying to climb the same ladder. So one of the first corporate gigs I did, I thought this would be cool. I phone up most of the participants in advance and find out what's bothering them, what their limiting beliefs are. And they all either said, I've got no limiting beliefs, I'm perfect as I am. One person said, I'm not telling you about my daddy issues. I thought you must be the best formed executive team I've ever come across.
Yeah,
I went into the
yeah,
session and said, now, all the research says that 78% of people have imposter syndrome, or maybe it's 50% of imposter, 78% of limiting beliefs. So the chances are that there's about 15 of you in here have something, subconscious pattern that's holding you back. No, no, we're fine at it. But we did some stuff. We did some work with a bit of NLP and submodalities. I actually did a little bit of visualization slash hypnotherapy with them.
yeah.
And after we'd finished, over the next couple of weeks, about two-thirds of the people phoned me up and said, "Well, I have actually a bit of an issue, but I didn't. I just want to talk about it to you one to one outside that room. But at least it's made me feel I can open up about it."
Great
So
stuff.
I think that's part of the stigma. You have to say it is
Yeah,
okay to
sure.
talk about it. And even if you don't want to talk about it, you can still do something about it. Don't suffer in silence, because sure, that leads to stress, to anxiety, to burnout. And you one of the things that was common was the fear of success. I don't feel I can cope in this role, but I'm hiding it well. What if I get promoted to the next role when I'll be even more out of my depth?
Yeah, yeah. It's because it's the fear of failure as well. And
Yes.
looking back to, I don't know, are you a Man United fan? You mentioned Alex Ferguson there a few minutes ago, but Alex Ferguson also made a very inspirational speech. I don't know if you've seen on YouTube about failure and how that, like, when he obviously the manager of Manchester United, folks who don't know who Alex Ferguson is, manager was he over 20, was 25 years Manchester United manager, and he like was the manager during the 90s, which the glory days of Man United. Man United fan myself, folks, have to hold my hand up and say the era of Eric Cantona and Mark Hughes and all of those great players, Ryan Giggs and who have you, but and Roy Keane, our own Roy Keane, Cork, Dennis Irwin. But he anyway, get back to the point I was making, that Alex Ferguson said in the speech that he learned more from, he sought failure, that he learned more from, it wasn't all the wins, it was the defeats, that the morning after the defeat, if they were beaten, they tried to win every game, but you can't, it's impossible to do that. But when they did have a defeat, that would be back on the training ground with a pep in their step, more determined than ever the next morning. It was
Yeah.
more motivational. He took more from the defeats than the wins. And he actually, something that he taught, because we're all kind of conditioned, in society, and especially in the corporate world, in the corporate environment, that we need to be successful because there's pressure in that comes with that. Like you're getting your salary at the end of the month, because we have to, all the pressures of the modern living and the cost of living, like your mortgages to pay, and if that's taken away, like it's all the fear that comes with that. And you mentioned the redundancy. Like I had that experience twice in the corporate world myself, and it's not pleasant. And there's that kind of like kind of stigma almost,
Yes.
that is there kind of in the background, that you need to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, because my family to feed, my mortgage to pay, and it's that carrot at the end of the stick that is constantly keeping. So I found that, like, if you don't have the tools and techniques, which I didn't have back then you can quickly be sucked into a mode of stress and anxiety and sleepless nights, can't you?
Yeah. Well, very easily is. And I remember I would lie awake for hours thinking, just think of all the things that could go wrong, or all the
Mm.
things that I might have done wrong.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be replaying scenarios over and over, remember, in your head. I don't know if you've ever done that. Be lying in bed, replaying those scenarios and not realizing that, like, what I was doing back then, because I hadn't got the insight into, what we have now. But
Yeah. Yeah. They're just thoughts. They're not reality. They're just thoughts.
yeah, Yeah, exactly, exactly. And is it okay to that I mentioned? I know you mentioned to me offline that you are currently writing a book as well. Would you
I
like to
am.
share a little bit about that?
I Unfortunately, the publisher won't let me reveal the title just yet, which is a pity. But
Okay.
last week I signed off on the manuscript and the graphics for it. Got the PR pack ready to start the pre-launch. Launch date is the 17th of June at the moment. But it goes through the ASDIC framework that I mentioned, which is acceptance, stabilization, development, improvement, and consistency. And it's really the journey that I mentioned earlier for aspiring executives or executives who feel they're stuck. And the A of the acceptance, accept that there is something sticking you and that it's your problem. It's not somebody else's fault. It's your fault. And that came back to a quote that I heard. I can't remember what a conference once when someone said, "Oh, you hear there's leaders and there's followers. There's not. There's leaders and there's victims. The victims are the people who it's always someone else's fault. It's never down to them. The leaders aren't the people that bang their drums, and the people that say, okay, I've got to do something about this rather than blame the world for it."
Yeah,
And I thought that's quite powerful. So the first stage is accept that there
good
is
point.
something and it's yours to do something about it. Then stabilization, which is we do a lot of the visualization, the NLP, hypnotherapy, if people want it, to say, how do you get over those beliefs? How do you get rid of them? How do you stabilize yourself? And then you can start to develop through goal setting, through smart goal setting, and using some of the NLP programs. Your mind is a pattern recognition device. So if you set your goals with a pattern to them, uh, then you're far more likely to achieve them. Then you can start to improve and develop further skills like your communication skills, your trust and rapport building skills. And then the consistency element is how do you maintain this new thing, even when you're hit by a crosswind, when you're met by a difficult person or a difficult conversation. As we spoke about earlier, how can you maintain your balance and not be thrown off by that? And that sort of feeds into a bit of the negotiation. The negotiation stuff that I worked with, it was not you bang the table, start high, and let them beat you down. It's actually very much focused on win-win negotiation. How can you both get something good out of it? And focusing on the problem rather than the people. So it's far more collaborative than the camel bazaar you sometimes get in these corporate negotiations.
Sure. Sounds
So
fascinating.
it goes through that process, but it's all predicated by this is how your mind works, and 90% of what you're doing and getting today is because of the way your mind works, and it's probably not your fault it works that way. It's probably something that was, for want of a better expression, programmed into you when you were under 11 or when you were under pressure with emotion and an authority figure said something to you that your unconscious mind thought, oh, I'm going to protect him against that. It might be if you get something wrong at school, the teacher says you're an idiot, you'll never amount to anything. Your unconscious mind thinks, I'm an idiot, I'll never amount to anything, and tries not to put you in the situation where you can be shown up to be an idiot. So it's a predicate the whole thing, but this is how your mind works. You probably
Absolutely.
you're behaving in a certain way. That behavior comes from your thoughts, which gives rise to your feelings, which gives rise to your behaviors, which gives rise to your outcomes. If we can go right back to the thoughts, then very quickly we can start to change the feelings that generates, the actions and behaviors that you show, which will change the outcomes. And then once you've got into that mode, we can start to give you tools that will really help you get the outcomes you want. So that's what the book's all about.
Very good, very good. It reminds me when you were going through that. It sounds fascinating, Donald. I can't wait. Do we get a copy?
Yes, you will do.
A signed copy. But I don't know if you've came across the book.
When someone to start a leaf blower outside.
What's that?
You get someone to start with a leaf blower outside my window.
Oh no.
I've been some headphones in.
No, you're grand. We can still hear you fine. But I don't know if you're aware of the book, The Chimp Paradox by Dr. C. Peters. Have you come across that at all?
What's the
The Chimp Paradox by Dr. C. Peters.
was that the one about the monkeys and the bananas at the top of the ladder?
Yeah, it's the snooker player Ronnie O'Sullivan.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's the World Snooker Championship is currently going on in Sheffield, Crucible in Sheffield at the moment. And Ronnie was very, I suppose he said himself, like unstable mentally in terms of his, emotions, especially in bigger matches. He couldn't control his thoughts or emotions, and which led to him sabotaging the matches and his success basically. Because the guy was born kind of with a snooker cue in his hand. He was like a natural talent and an ability that he's always had. But it was only when he got in touch with this Dr. Steve Peters, who has helped him to kind of control that a very important part of his game. Because it's not all about ability, as you know, sport. The mental side of it is a huge part of it. And basically, the concept was and is where like we have a monkey mind, which is called the chimp paradox, that is ingrained into us human beings as a protective mechanism over hundreds and thousands of years, and it can't think, it can't reason, and it functions of ego based, and it overreacts. It's the kind of I suppose the emotional brain, if you like. And when the pressure comes on, you look in and we go into the chimp mode, as Ronnie used to say, and walk out of games and, throw the toys out of the pram and all the rest of it. And so he was able to learn how to recognize that we all have that mode.
Yeah.
But it's about managing that chimp. Because if you let a chimp loose, obviously you're going to wreck the place, right? Sabotage your health and your happiness. But once you know and you can manage that emotional side that he can do now a lot better. He still has his moments, of course, like he's only human and everyone makes mistakes, but he's between him coming in touch with Dr. Steve Peters before and after, he's won, I think, 7 world titles.
Yeah.
And he's been, a very successful snooker player. And that's the thing that sticks with me with that book is that we've all done things and said things that in the heat of the moment, right, through emotions that we later regret and we feel guilt about. And I didn't understand that process until I read this book and I heard Ronnie's story, because when we're in that kind of mode, that emotional mode, that you can't control your thoughts and emotions, and you let it get on top of you. That can have a very detrimental effect, and we can react in ways that, as I mentioned earlier, like when we're in that mode, we tend to make, that firefighting, whether it be in the corporate, bring it back to the corporate world as well, we're not going to make good decisions and choices. So I think it's a really good book. It's worth getting. It's worth reading. Dr. C. Peters, The Chimp Paradox, folks. And I've mentioned it before in the podcast, how has helped me in my life as well to kind of understand, I suppose, more about, how my mind works in that regard, and to be able to, as Dr. C. Peters says, to whether it be breath work, whether it be different ways and means of relaxing yourself in the moment, and because the chimp goes to sleep, because eventually the human, as he calls it, kicks back in. And I don't mind saying that, like, even when, like, I'm doing this 15 years, this work, hypnosis, hypnotherapy, 15 years. And in the early days of doing it, like, I'd be very, if I was doing an ad on Facebook, for example, and somebody come on trolling me, I could be up all night debating them, or, getting peeved off or whatever with it and letting it get to me a little bit. And but there's always like, throws out there no matter what you do. But now I have a very low zero tolerance kind of policy for that. It's block and delete, it's called. Works quite well.
Yeah,
But back then I was like getting engaged and all this with that. And even if I got an email that I didn't like, and I'd be going, okay, I'm going to show them now and I'm going to email back. And the next day I'd be thinking, oh, well, maybe I should have responded in a more productive way. I was just out of emotion. That,
yeah,
and I think like the modern world that we live in, like through mobile phones and text messages, and we know about communication, that it's only 7% words. I know words can be really important, the way like words are important, but it's still 93% body language and tone of voice that you're missing. Like if you're texting somebody, or if you're on social media and you're debating, you're doing all this stuff, that it can depend on your emotional state, how you
yeah,
perceive that, how you take a certain message. But I think in the corporate world, it's definitely something where you know the the um, the um, the lesson of the monkey mind, or whatever you want to call it, can be a good one.
yeah. No, we do a lot of work about, how can you say, emotions. Don't let your emotions hijack you, because you will have an instinctive reaction. There will be things that push your buttons. Have you got a defense mechanism? And for me, it's taking off my glasses and polishing my glasses before I say anything if someone does something that would otherwise wind me up.
All right, okay.
And then turn it.
I keep that in mind for the future.
Yeah, I can even taking off my glasses, think, what am I saying to him?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then go to the balcony and say, if I was standing above this situation and looking down on it, what would I think was going on? And what would be an appropriate way to react? And I say to people a lot, your anger is not an inappropriate reaction if the situation's right, but make sure it's a conscious choice. You've chosen to be angry because it's the right thing to do. You've not just reacted angrily because something's set you off based on your daddy issues from years ago or whatever.
Yeah,
Take time to
exactly.
react. Reacting emotionally is not wrong, but make it a conscious choice rather than just an emotional habit. Because if you just go instinctively to the emotional reaction, you've lost, because your emotions have hijacked your monkey brains, hijacked your thinking brain.
Yeah, and it can be like the, monkey see, monkey do, and well, human see, human do,
Yes.
but in our case, but there's a famous line in that movie, Planet of the Apes, human see, human do, but
Yeah.
with, that one with Charlton Heston, a famous movie, but yeah, I mean, look, it's definitely something as well, but I'm sure you'd agree that it can come from childhood, that that's the way we learn, isn't it? From looking and learning at other parents and authority figures, that how they are responding to situations. And we're wired, as I do say, each one of us, like neurologically speaking, we're made up of thousands of neurons that are wired together in a certain way. And we're all wired differently, like the electrical circuit of a house. And how if you put yourself in the exact same situation, we're both going to respond in different ways depending on how we're wired. And we have all different triggers and different associations depending on our how we experience life through our five senses. So it took me a long time to figure out that, what was that? No, nothing, like nothing. I have a great relationship, but now my dad, and but over time, I realized that I responding in a similar way to some
Yeah.
situations than he did, and not always um, productive. So I think sometimes, like, we can give ourselves a break on that and take a step back and just go, hold on a minute, stop.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but it's interesting, 'cause as you say, again, it's one of the things that we look at, particularly in the negotiation field, but also in the dealing with dealing with difficult people. Everyone's got we look at the same barrel of data, but based on our experiences, our thoughts that we've been conditioned, you select different parts of the data, but then you assign meaning to them. form beliefs and give them meaning. And so from the same data, you can reach entirely different conclusions. And it all goes back to you, the lens through which you're interpreting it. You probably don't select all the data and you interpret it according to your life experience, which can give you completely different results, even though you're both looking at exactly the same thing.
That's
And we
it,
call it,
exactly.
in negotiation, we call it the ladder of inference. I say at the top, you develop a very partisan perception thinking, well, if I see it this way, no one else can see it any other way. And the other person thinking exactly the same, who is this idiot? Interestingly, years ago,
Yeah.
we did or a colleague of mine did a negotiation session with the NATO Defence College in Rome, and they're starting to do an exercise like this. And he said, "You're telling me I should think about how the Russians would see things?" And he said, "Yeah, wouldn't you want to know how the Russians see things? Don't you think that would be good?" And he said, "No." I said, "Well, why not?" He goes, "Because I might agree with them."
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I think as I said, like in the corporate world, like emails, and all of that, it's important to empower, whether it be managers or employees, to be able to, I said, respond rather than react in these
Yes.
moments. And because I've been there, done that. And you've been done there, done that, wore the t-shirt as well. And because sometimes, like, you go to put together an email in an emotional moment and go, no, I won't send it now. I'll send it in the morning, because I always say that there's nothing stopping me sending this tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
that's
I,
it.
but I never do, because a good night's sleep, folks, works wonders. And you come back with a fresh perspective, don't you? A new way of looking at it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, as you say, write the email at night, say then read it in the morning, decide whether you should send it or not. You
Yeah,
get the cathartic thing of writing it, but not the regret of having sent it.
exactly, exactly. Donald, I just have one eye on the time there, and time has flown. Chatting you, I've really enjoyed the discussion that we've had here today in the podcast.
That's
Just
been
before
good.
you
Thanks for
go,
having me.
you're very welcome. What do you get the most? What's your passions? What do you get the most out of the work that you do? What
It's
drives you? What makes you tick, in other words?
it's it's when someone was I see you get some thank you cards behind some cards said thank you, you've changed my life. That is, it gives you a bigger buzz, a bigger dopamine high than closing any contract in the corporate world. When someone says you've changed my life, that's the thing that really gives me the buzz from this work.
Yeah, it definitely is a great feeling to get that feedback. And, a happier employee in work is a happier person outside work, and it works vice versa, folks. So, definitely get in touch with Donald. Donald, have you got any email, website that you would like to share with us if anyone wants
Yes.
to get in touch with you?
So actually, but the easiest one is donaldhamilton.co.uk. It's probably the easiest one. There's also donaldhamiltonhypnotherapy.com. Or if you want to email me, just info@donaldhamiltonhypnotherapy.com. It's quite a long one. When you set up the website, you don't realize how long email address is going to be. But donald@donaldhamiltonhypnotherapy.com.
Great stuff. And watch this space for the book. What date have you penciled in?
17th of June is the launch date. So I think we're allowed to reveal the title 2 or 3 weeks before. So I'll certainly notify you so you can pop it out to the listeners.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So look, Donald, we let you go, and we'll be in touch. I don't know. Hopefully, we'll be in touch. We were working together in the
Yeah,
future. And
well, I'd love to come and see your program in action. Yeah, I think, as you mentioned, I think hopefully some stuff we can do together to really take it to another level.
definitely. Well, I've been really enjoying the venture with Sharon. Sharon, our
Yeah,
lead. Hi, Sharon, if you're watching. Because you know, two heads or two minds are always better than one, but three minds are even better than two. So
Exactly.
there you go. So, listen, thanks very much again for coming on the podcast and for your time here today. And listen, best of luck with everything. Best of luck with your practice. Best of luck with your book as well. I'm sure it's going to be a bestseller. And so we'll be in touch. All right,
Okay.
Don, thanks very much. Take care.
Thanks, Trevor.
Take care,
See you.
buddy. Okay, folks, it's that time again to say goodbye. Another hour has flown on the podcast, chatting about the work that we love to do. And I have enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Well, the Power Within podcast, this podcast is a platform for, inspiring people with inspiring stories with a lot to offer. And I really enjoy the conversations and discussions that I have here with my guests. And as I said, I hope you're enjoying them as well. So until the next time, be good to yourselves and be good to each other. And we'll see you on the next episode of the podcast. Take care, folks.